Hello, my friend. It's so good to see you. I am so happy to have you. You know, it's we had our recording last time, which started in, with some human just kind of static, things that were not working well technologically and energetically. And it was just like, eh. And then I went to go edit it, and it was like there was even more things wrong with that recording. So the universe stepped in to just clean that slate for us to be like, let's go again.
I know, and I thank you for having me here, by the way. Again, I told you when you reached out to re-record, I was like, good. I manifested that because I was just so in flux at the moment and still in flux. I'm still doing my book tour, but much more grounded and settled today. So
Yeah,
happy about
good.
this.
It's always about, like ever since I started this podcast, I have trusted the signs from God, the signs from the universe, the flow of things, like just completely going with it, even when because editing was the part that I was not looking forward to at all. And honestly, I had talked about starting a podcast for years, but it was that part where I'm like, unless I hire someone, I don't want to do that part. I just
Yes.
like, ugh. But I wanted to do this, and this came through, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to edit. And I fell in love with the editing process.
Mm.
It's just like being in this flow, but also being in a flow state with editing leads to some really interesting things. And so this whole podcast has been approached in that way, that spirit's guiding it. It
Yes.
is its own entity that has its own energy that we get to enter into and play with. And sometimes the energy like mix isn't right. We're just like,
Yes.
we gotta like pick a different day, humans. Like this isn't working.
Yes. And I love that this is where we're diving into right now because being in that flow and witnessing the uh harmonics of everything that's always in existence and learning how to dance with it all and learning when we step on a foot as we're dancing and to play with it and to move with it and to try again. I really have been looking at, I mean, same with me, being on the road and consistently witnessing, okay, I have to just be fully present because I don't really have the option to not be. With things moving so quickly in my world, it has been a powerful practice in continuous presence because I really can't not is the funny thing. I can't not, if I spend time it outside of that present moment, um, things get jammed up pretty quickly, and of course there's always the ability when once we move into presence to shift all of it past future present. Um, so I'm glad that we're diving into this because I'm right there with you.
Explain how it feels for the with the jam up, because I think people who are not conscious of
Mm.
that occurs when you are either forcing things with your ego mind or just not being in the flow with, aligned creation, and you're just trying too hard, really, to,
Yes.
to do the, like, explain how that feels. And I'm sure some people can relate to it and go, oh yeah, I've been there. I live there.
And that's what I was going to say is actually human nature has a huge amount of resistance all of the time because the way that it kind of works and the way that it's been shown to me is that our tremendous amount of light funnels into the human experience and goes through many dimensional sort of funnelings, right? Into denser and denser layers where we perceive separation. That's part of the human experience is separation. It's like the main part, to be honest. And so we come into this individual experience, this individual human body, this individual perception of ego and personality and all of that. And because of that, like, this is exactly what we want. This is the game that we're playing. But because of that, we also perceive, um, we need the mental paradigms to exist. So, in order to perceive separation from ourselves and each other and everything else, we actually have to have these programs running in our minds that tell us that. And we get so deep in this illusion that we actually believe them so intensely. And this is sort of like success, right? Success in the game is that we believe these mental programs. I'm separate, and on and on. Part of that separation is the unfolding over time. We need all of these in order to believe in the human experience. So when I'm in the, let me gather this a little bit. We have these programs running that cause a lot of resistance because if we were present, a lot of the programs would just sort of dissipate and we would be able to match the inherent flow that's existing all of the time. We don't do that because we've got these programs running and we're like, I'm human and I'm doing this. So a lot of those programs are like, I wake up at 7, I do this is my name, this is my family, this is the way that I behave. And as we become more and more present, a lot of that eases up. And we still have an individual experience, but it doesn't have such intense parameters, meaning the parameters are actually natural and inherent as opposed to really firm and sort of stuck. The firm and stuck is our mind saying, if it doesn't go this way, it's control, right? If it doesn't go this way, um, things are going to fall apart in my life. And so those are the programs. But the beauty of it is, as we start to ease up on those programs, actually there's this inherent harmony that flows with all of it. So the way that I'm built is this beautiful sacred geometric pattern that naturally has a beautiful harmony with the way that you're built as this beautiful sacred geometric pattern, with the way that the whole world exists. I'm not aware of that when I'm in the denser, real human experience where I'm operating from my mind.
Mhm.
So easing up on that, I get to play with the dance and the flow of all of existence. And I know that there's probably more clarification in there. I went full circle. So if there's, a question in that, I'd love to hear it. But it really has to do with no longer operating from strictly the mind and the mental programs and moving into presence. And as we do that, there is an inherent flow where I don't need to make my mind up beforehand. I do some planning, but a lot of it just moves on its own accord.
It unfolds, right? We
Yeah.
use that word a lot of like this unfolding. And I love that visual of it. It's like you don't see what's inside the folds, right? You can't
Yeah.
look in there. It's like a delicate folded up
Mm.
thing, and then it just unfolds, and you're like, oh, that's what that is. Like, oh,
What a
that's what's meant to
beautiful,
happen. Ooh,
yeah.
this is what's happening right now. We didn't get to see it beforehand and know it. And so much of our mind wants to know the things beforehand. It's like, oh, I want to see the
Mm.
10-year plan, mapped out. And, that's the difference. However, in like visualization, and we can visualize 10 years out, we can visualize the future, but planning the future in a rigid way. And just this is, I guess a summary of what you were just saying. You're just planning that out and being rigid about it, like, oh, it has to look this way. And then when it doesn't, you fall apart and you
Yeah.
like get depressed and you're like, oh my God, I suck, or my life is awful. Like when it doesn't unfold in exactly that way, um, we get to be with what it is. And that's
Yeah.
the joy of real life, is that you get to be with what is at every moment, and still doesn't, so let's talk about the visualization part, because it doesn't mean that you don't visualize the future and co-create your future through, let's say, mental planning or an energetic planning. It's just
Yes.
that we hold, like you said, those parameters more loosely, right?
Yes, yes. When I first started going into presence, people would talk about presence, and I was like, that it was similar to when people would talk about go into the heart, operate from the heart. I was like, okay, I will, but what does that mean? How do I do that? That makes no sense to me. And the process of it has actually been really, really profound. And I witness when I work with other people, I witness them going into this. What do you mean? What does that mean? Okay, be present with it. Okay, but what does that mean?
Mm.
The process of it actually involves a lot of, there's a bit of a struggle in the surrender to the present moment. So I kind of want to touch on that first before we go into the visioning, because
Sure.
that happens first. There is this feeling where when we start to release the mental paradigms and the mental control, there's this feeling of, I'm not doing anything. There's a lot of confusion. The releasing of it is uncomfortable for most people, I will say, because we are used to really placing our mental paradigm onto our reality and making it all work that way. So it's often when I talk to people, it often feels like, well, I'm not doing anything. I don't know what's going on. I'm kind of just sitting here. Like, is this surrender? So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because yes, that's surrender. And that's a huge part of the process of being, of learning to be. And it actually takes more than our minds will let us. So we reach these sort of thresholds where we surrender and we're like, okay, I've surrendered now. I've got 1,000 ideas and I'm going to do all of those ideas. They're mental ideas. We're actually not moving with presence still. So we get all, monkey mind, and we get all crazy with it, and we start doing the things. I'm describing my process and what I've witnessed with a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I surrendered. Now I'm going to get into it again.
Hmm.
And, then there's layers and layers in the beautiful process of spiritual awakening, is that our higher self really starts to step in and say, this isn't going to work anymore. And we start to notice, oh, the mental parameters that I was living by before, they either don't feel as good, something feels off, or it's just not working the way that it used to, because we're being gently guided to learn how to be present. So there's this feeling of like, oh, this isn't working anymore. I can't make myself do that anymore. We start to notice where we've forced, where we've pushed our energy, because it just feels so much more uncomfortable than it used to. So there's this deepening and deepening and deepening of presence. And then that's where I notice the imagination starts to come in. That's where we start to say, oh, okay, what can I do? What am I doing in this state of surrender? What do I want my life to be like? What would feel really good? What would be interesting? What am I desiring? I don't necessarily need to act on it, because that's part of that balance coming in. We've been very action oriented without the presence connected to it. Action in deep presence, it does exist. That was another question that I had when I started going into this. Am I ever going to do anything ever again? It really feels very dramatic, but as I started deepening into that presence, I started noticing that there is a channeled flow of action that comes from the present moment. It is where we draw channeling from. It is where we draw ecstatic dance, ecstatic movement. There is an inherent flow and movement and action that is presented directly from the present moment. It literally emerges from the present moment. It doesn't force itself. It's not something where we need to like push beyond. And there are times when that energy that's flowing from the present moment, it will create a lot of what we call action, a lot of what we understand of as action, but it doesn't always show up that way. So sometimes the present moment calls us to a lot of stillness. Other times the present moment calls us to a lot of action. And in that space, because we are the creators, we are always going to be imagining what would be desirable of course, we're also imagining what we don't desire, maybe
Mm.
unconsciously. But that game of imagination is actually what directs us in an energetic way toward, it's sort of like the rudder. We don't, and I don't know a lot about mechanics, so maybe I'm speaking wrong here, but the rudder isn't the most powerful in the front of a boat, propelling from behind, right? That imagination that propels us, that's the rudder at the back of the boat. That's really driving the directionality of where we're going. And the beautiful thing about imagination is that a lot of people hold back on what they allow themselves to imagine because they think that maybe there's something that they're supposed to be doing. But the imagination is always informed by the true self, by the present self. So, that imagination, if you desire things, that is actually guiding you toward who you truly are. So, I wanted to also bring in that our desires are innate, they're part of us.
Yes. And desire is a beautiful thing to talk about because I think, there's different camps or different belief systems around desire that
Mhm.
some people believe that desire is a sin or it's wrong or that we should move away from desire or that desire cause suffering, right?
Right,
In the Buddhist tradition.
right.
And and then there's those of us who believe that desire is that thing. It's like the um, what's a good metaphor for it? It's a dream. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like being able to actually and then know that wow, we have that power to dream. We have the
Yes.
power to desire. Like, why not utilize that? Because how interesting is it to be able to think about something that you want or to feel into something that you want? And desire is that mix. I think that once you get to a place of where you're desiring through feeling, like actually like through, it's not just a mental game anymore of imagining and seeing with your third eye and the mental body. You're actually feeling what it feels like to be a published author, feeling what it feels like to be a world traveler, feeling what it feels like to be a mother or whatever role, whatever thing, whatever action you wish to have. And you get to actually desire it and then feel it throughout your body. And then that gets you even closer to it becoming a reality.
Yes. I love that distinction between the desire being a mental paradigm and something that we experience and feel.
Mm.
And I want to also make a distinction. I've really, really, on a personal note, because this is a big part of, what's in my most recent book, actually,
Mm.
imagination, desire, and how all of that plays into our creation process. So I've been personally studying this. And in terms of the way that, the Buddhists look at it, where desire creates suffering, there's a bit of a nuance there that I have discovered. It's really the attachment to the
Mhm.
desire.
Right.
It's not the desire itself. So we could call that distinction the difference between desire and need. If
Mhm.
we have a need, if we believe that we have a need, it's actually showing that we believe that we have separation between the fullness of who we are and this thing over here. The
Mhm.
fullness of who we are includes the present moment experience of everything that we could ever desire and anything that we will desire. It's all from the perception of oneness. It already exists within us, and there's no time and space between us and the thing that we desire. So if we start to move into need, it shows that we are operating from that mental paradigm, as you said, where
Yes.
we're like, I've got to reach for this over here. It's got to be this way, or else somehow it won't work. So, shifting our perspective to actually desire is such a beautiful God given trait that is us. God given meaning the God running through us, the God that we are, the aspect of the all that is that we are bringing into this experience, that part of me, that it's not even a part, that fullness of me desires to experience the next part of my journey, the next experience that I'm calling in. That's what desire comes from. It's this beautiful natural emergence. It's not a grasping, it's not an attachment to things needing to be the way that we perceive them from the mental place that we would need them to be in order to have control and feel safe and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that distinction. It's so true that when we know that we are all, that
Yeah.
we are one with everything, and we know that, as you said, everything we've ever desired is already here,
Yeah.
then there isn't that want, that need, that searching for. It's not this reaching for. It's just it's a difference. It's a surrender to. It's the opening up
Mm.
to. It's the
Yes.
receiving of. It's
Yes.
so different than the grasping of, right? And what we're taught through our mental model to seek and grasp and go after things in that
Yeah.
way, and it's such a different way of living. So how did you get into this way of living life,
Mm.
this shift into this place of flow and receiving, and um, being able to recognize that this is our God-given, ability and right, and this is who we really are here on this planet and in this lifetime.
Yeah, it's a continuous process through many moments of discomfort and trying to control, trying to have the perfect situation. You know, something that I have personally really experienced in my life is the paradigms of control and perfectionism. Those have been very strong in me. So it's through actually a lot of moments where I realize that control isn't serving me. And how do I realize it? Through things sort of falling apart as I attempt to control it.
Mm,
So it really has been a continuous process. Um, to share a bit more about that process, I went through a really intense, powerful spiritual awakening in the year 2012. And at that time, my life flipped completely. So I was operating a business. I'm actually here in Boise on my book tour, Boise, Idaho. And this is where I was living when that started. So it's really profound.
mm, cool, full
And
circle.
speaking of, I'm going to throw this in, the inherent flow of everything. I had a Facebook memory come up 5 years ago for my first book. I was on tour and I was in Boise 5 years ago to the date holding the same workshops. So it's
Wow.
like, and I did not plan that. No planning on that. So inherent divine flow. There is some sort of magic working with all of it.
Mm,
So this is where I went through my initial awakening. And it was really intense. I was running a business, I was in a relationship, I, was part of all these different things within the community. And I went through a breakup in my relationship, which was divinely timed. What happened as a result of that breakup was things just blew open in my consciousness. I started channeling spontaneously. Time was morphing. It actually, the best way to describe it to people is that I was completely sober, but it felt like I was on psychedelics for about 3 months.
mm,
There was a lot of intensity that was happening at that time. I was witnessing number synchronicity, but it wasn't just a sweet, like, okay, there's 1111. It was, I would see numbers, I would see repeating numbers or symbols, And it would actually feel like I was being hit in the head with a gong, and everything in my reality would turn into psychedelic like experience. It was really, really, really powerful. And so that's a huge benefit for me, I feel, because there wasn't, I suppose that I could have denied it. I could have said, no, 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 but it actually felt better to exist with that reality. It felt more real to go into that space, even though it was very different than the human reality I'd been living. It felt more real than previously. It felt
Mm.
more natural. It felt more inherent. But my human experience was massively shifting. So there was a lot of changes within my human experience as a result of all of this coming in. And that was sort of my initial, um, the human propulsion to continue things as they are, to control things, to have things make sense. It literally wasn't working. It
Mm.
just stopped working for me. And I probably could have resisted it, but I almost needed to surrender. I almost had to surrender. There almost wasn't another way for me. This was my higher self coming in and saying, we're going to go this way now. And it was such a beautiful thing to learn how to surrender. I was at the time teaching fitness classes. I owned a fitness studio. And I remember after I sold it and really let myself, I didn't do anything. I literally sat in meditation again and again and again for a year. I saw how absolutely depleted and exhausted I was from the model of life that I was living before. I
Mm.
look back at pictures too, and like I looked so tense. I
Mm.
mean, my neck was bigger than my head. Like I was working out so much, which is beautiful. But for me, there was so much of this tense energy, um, and I was working 6, 7 days a week. There was just no flow in
Yeah.
my life. And when I let all of that go, because it kind of was being taken away from me, as much as I was trying to grasp it at times, when I let that go, I noticed how deeply I needed to rest. And I did. Like I said, I was in meditation continuously for about a year, just practicing channeling, learning how to get into this state continuously, and learning to surrender and be. So I had a big crash course in it. And that's a lot of my purpose. I needed to like flip the life,
Yeah.
completely have a new situation, because a lot of my purpose is to assist others through this awakening process. So that was my journey. It wasn't subtle, and it continues to not be subtle. uh, for the benefit of me and those that I serve.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to hear your experience of it. And, for listeners to know that everyone's experiences are going to be different, but we're all called. We are all called throughout our entire lives to enter into this oneness and to realize who we are. And I want to talk about that a little bit because I believe, like you do, that we have chosen to come here onto this earthly plane or into this earthly plane to have this experience of form and to have this experience of duality and to be able to know ourselves in different ways. So through the choice of that, it almost kind of counters, or it's I think it's interesting to think about, like, well, then in this human form, seeking oneness again and seeking, that realization of higher self and our spiritual nature. What do you think that's all about? That's like we've come here and chosen this and want the human experience, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
And yet, in so many of us seek not to necessarily go back to that, but seek this clarity and understanding of this is what this is, and then how we can wield it. Do you think it's just that we're at different stages of the evolution of our souls, or that we are, um, that's part of the game too, to
Yes.
realize this.
Yes. It is part of the game. We can see, so something that actually I had a channeling for the collective group here just a few days ago, and there was a lot of clarity that came through around this veil that we really pass through to forget, that we energetically pass through to forget, and how dense we need to be to believe in the illusion of separation, because we are not. Our true nature is all that is. Our true nature is oneness, eternal love. That's our true nature. And so it takes a lot. There's actually a lot of pressure in the purest sense, like energetic sense of the word. It takes a lot for us to move into the realms of forgetting that. And that is actually what causes suffering, the belief in the separation, as we talked about, because we know that we're not. So if we know, if somebody's, I'm going to use a silly example. If you know your name and somebody's always calling you a different name, there's going to be an internal resistance to it. Eventually, you might end up going by that other name. But there's going to be like a little wiggle in you that says, that's not quite right. The truth of us knows who we are. And so it's almost like going deep underwater and then floating to the surface. It's inherent. It's what we're going to do. I don't see myself as a seeker because I am not seeking anything. I'm simply releasing what's holding me back from
Mm.
all that I am. And it's all that it is the paradigms. It's just the mental beliefs that are holding me back. When I am present, I am. And I join with everything. It is. And it's so delicious. And it feels right because it is who we are. So the game, again, the successful game is feeling separation. The successful game is feeling like we're not gods. The successful game is feeling like we have enemy consciousness with each other. That's success, because the amount of pressure that it takes for us to forget the fullness of who we are is pretty tremendous. The
Mm.
the success of this game is that we have really had the opportunity to have this dense individual experience that we can't have in our fullness.
Mhm.
And part of that dense experience of being an individual is all of this. Oh, I'm not beautiful. I'm not special. I'm not God. I'm not perfect. I'm somehow flawed. All of these things, like, we only believe them because we have put ourselves into this very dense layer of reality. So as soon as we have just a slight opening through that field of fog, we're like, oh yeah, this feels way better. This is who I am. Of course I love you. Of course I love me in my fullness. Of
Mhm.
course there is ultimate perfection in all. It's all I can see because it is the truth of who we are.
Yeah, it's like having, playing a game of where, you think that, oh, you picking up these little coins is the object of the game, but then you realize like a secret door to a secret world that you hadn't noticed before in the like 80,000 rounds you went around the board, just like getting the
Yes.
coins. And then you're like, oh, wait, oh, secret door, secret
Yes.
passage, secret world that now becomes known, and you go, oh, I can play this totally differently now. It's a completely, it's the same game, but it's playing it with a whole different understanding, right?
Completely. Completely. We don't lose the game. We just lose, or we envelop the denser perceptions. We don't, I like to think of it like Russian nesting dolls. When we're in the innermost Russian nesting doll, that's our experience. But when we move out to the next Russian nesting doll and the next one, we still include the other experiences. And that's the magic. In our soul form, we get to experience this human separation, this density layer. And when we reach the fullness of ourselves again, we still have that. We still have that within us. That's why this human experience is so special and powerful, because we get to inhabit it and have that soul memory of it
Mm.
and be a part of the all. So it's really powerful. But yeah, we get to play it very differently when as we start to awaken to more of the fullness of who we are, then we're like, oh, I can play really consciously. I can
Yeah.
choose. Do I want to be in the densest? Oh, okay, wait, now I'm witnessing it. Now I can really make that choice that I get to operate more from my higher self.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
good to, I think remind ourselves, but also, for listeners to hear that, when, whether you want to call it the spiritual journey or walking the spiritual path or awakening or becoming one with all that is, whatever you want to call it, this takes that first scary step or the push off the ledge like you got, right?
Yeah.
So it always requires a step into, and our free will is involved in that. Like we were
Mhm.
talking earlier about how we all get called. We can choose to
Yes.
ignore it or not, and
Right.
even yours, which was dramatic, you could have chose to ignore that, or you
Yeah.
could have chose to believe that you were mentally ill, or chose to believe that it was right, that something was wrong with you, and like, and people then put you on a bunch of medication, and I mean, we
Yep.
all we have all these choices, and for something that was less traumatic as a calling, which is easier to ignore, that happens all the time, right? So
Mhm.
we all get to be here in this experience and make those choices at every moment, really, of, oh, am I going to be awake to this experience? Am I going to be present in
Yes.
who I am and who I really am, and into myself as this incarnation of God and the light? Or am I going to, choose this other thing? So that choice point and having free will is extremely important, because I think some people think, oh, if I choose to go down, the spiritual path, or choose to recognize myself in this way, there's no going back, or it's going
Mhm.
to be, my whole life's going to, turn upside down, or it's going to look different, or I'm going to start wearing robes and I'm going to be like someone that no one can relate to. I mean, all those things could happen, but
Yes,
what
they
we get to
could. They
choose is
could.
how it all unfolds, as well as allowing. Yeah. So I think, it's part this choice that we get to have, and knowing that it's going to look how it's meant to look. And yes, it's also partly surrender, but at any moment, if that doesn't feel right to you, if that feels like too scary, too weird, too whatever, that you also can choose to go back to sleep and kind of become unconscious again to it. And I think we all probably
Mhm.
do that at in different levels throughout our whole life anyway. But I think
Yeah.
it's good to mention, because some people think, oh, I don't even want to touch that, go down that road, because of what that could mean. But it
Yeah.
really is not. It doesn't mean anything more than what you want to make it mean, and it doesn't
Yeah.
become anything more than what you're ready for it to become. And you get to
Yeah.
choose that.
Absolutely. And it is a delicious experience to, once we sort of surrender, it's like, oh, that actually feels good. Not always, sometimes the surrendering process can be quite difficult, can create a lot of change in our lives. And, you know, surrendering to the truth of who we are is really, really good. And
Mm.
there's no religion around it. There's no um, guru around it. This is really a powerfully self-informed, self-led process.
Mhm.
So yeah, there is choice. And also, there's going to be experiences coming up within all of us where we're the only ones. I mean, this is the truth always. where we're the only ones that can really say what that is
Mhm.
or navigate it the way that we are feeling guided to. It's very much a an empowered process, um,
Mhm.
and I find it to be a lot of fun every time I witness uh, resistance within me, and then when I witness it, I say, "Oh, okay, let's surrender." I love surrendering at this point. At this point in my process, oh my God, surrendering is the best thing because I've practiced surrender enough to know that when I can just drop into that, be with it,
Mm.
God, everything works so well. And I get to be the witness to everything working well in this beautiful symphony, this
Mhm.
harmonic structure that's already there. It's
Yeah.
powerful.
What do you recommend as a means for people, practices for their surrender that could help those that are in these earlier stages maybe, or uh, at whatever stage, to help that process along?
Mm. Some of the tools that I used early on, when I went through my awakening, so I want to mention this. I, before my awakening, meditation was very difficult. It actually felt physically uncomfortable because I had so much tension.
Mm.
Immediately when my awakening started, all I wanted to do was meditate. So I want to kind of share that because one of my most helpful tools is sitting in meditation or going into a channeled space. They're similar in nature. So just being, practicing just being. And if that's uncomfortable, ask for help. We have our guidance team, we have our higher self, we have guides, depending on what you feel comfortable with or what you believe in. Call on help, call on non physical help, call on physical help, ask a friend, ask, a guide or a teacher to assist you. Hey, I see you've had this experience. I'm going through this. The
Mhm.
asking for help is really powerful. I do it constantly with my guides. I have one of my favorite practices is going on a walk and having a conversation with my guides, or I'll do it while I'm driving and I'll speak these things out loud. If I'm on a walk and I'll put my earbuds in so that people think I'm on a phone conversation. I'm straight up talking to my guides. So what do I do about this situation? And I just have my headphones in so that as I'm walking, people don't think that I'm like talking to them. Fully just conversation with my guides. What's going on? Help
Yes.
me, you know? So those I would say are two of the greatest tools that I use
Mm.
still.
It's so good. I wanted to go back to the asking for physical help.
Mm,
And, there's a lot of, and I'll share a personal story around this because I too have conversations with my guides and my soul team, my higher self all the time, can easily drop into a state where that's very comfortable for those kinds of conversations.
right.
And it's beautiful. But more recently, in the last 2 years, maybe
Mhm,
2.5, I have been experiencing these profound new levels of awakening,
mhm,
these very deep excavating of trauma and
mhm,
pain, just pain that's been held in my body for a long time. And like you were describing earlier about the psychedelic experiences, I too, in a sober state, will experience not for months like you did, but it's a very intense in and concentrated few
mm,
hours to a day or 24-hour period of that type of experience. I'm traveling, I'm seeing things, I am purging all this stuff. It's very uncomfortable. It's very At the first time it
mm,
happened, it was really scary because it was a physical um physical feeling, and I passed out. And my husband
Wow.
and I were just trying to deal with this, and he was extremely, extremely. Oh, I don't. I I don't want to say or diminish it. Like his presence was all part of it,
Yes.
and so I've noticed that because all the times I've dropped into this space and have these breakthroughs, he's been with me. But the
Mm,
last one, he wasn't here. And I was home. I
mm,
was in a safe space, and I know my body, my human is choosing to have them at certain times that are
right.
safer than other
Yeah.
times. And I believe we all do that. We all choose when we're going to allow something to come in. And this was um, an initiation for me to choose it
Mm,
while he wasn't here. And I was going and I was like, oh God, okay, it's happening. And I went through it, and then he came home, and I told him what was going on. He was like, okay, like, what do you need? And he had
right.
already gone through the drill a few
Yeah.
times
Yeah.
to yeah, be able to get me the
Wow.
bucket, like the whole, all the things. And my son too, incredible in holding space for me during this time. And what I noticed within me is that I couldn't get to the level of fully letting go. It's kind of like when I've never been on a guided plant medicine ceremony. I've done plant medicines before, but never with a shaman, never guided. But it felt like that with me, that I
Yes.
needed the presence of the shaman chanting and the music and the just being there, like, creating the container of
Yeah.
safety for me to really let go. So as soon as he sat down with me and I could put my arm on him,
Mm,
I like it fully broke through and came out, and it was just beautiful. So
wow.
incredible. And I didn't realize that until that moment, that his presence, what for me was very necessary. And so humans, us physical people here, can be that powerful for each other. And you don't have to be a
Incredible.
shaman. I mean, my husband's not a shaman. He's not, he hasn't been ordained in anything. He doesn't have, a lineage that he's practiced, but just his presence and the feeling of safety, I suppose, that I had in his presence allowed me to let go. And I've had this idea over the, I don't know, last half decade or so of, wouldn't it be beautiful if there were, whether it came through an app or some type of service of where we could counsel one another, we could hold space for one another. We didn't need to hire and go to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to go into the jungle. And I'm not discounting the magic that those people hold and the beauty of what they carry within them to do that work, but I also believe that we can do that for one another very powerfully when we know just how to hold space, create a container. And the more that we individually know ourselves and that truth, even more so we can do it. So without the certifications and the degrees and the, ordainment and all of that. So that's how powerful we are,
Yes.
listeners, right? We are
Yes.
all of that. All of us are that. You don't have to get some dream that says you need to go and, go through this, 6-month program to become this thing. We are it. We already
Yes.
are it.
Yes. Yes. I love all of that. I love all of that. And what a powerful experience, by the way.
Mm,
And I love witnessing that we're moving into that very organically in a
yeah.
way, with I call it, I think it's called open source learning, right? We've got YouTube. You can learn anything at this
Right.
point for free.
Yeah.
And all of these, right now, so much of it's digital, and we're learning to have both. where we can be present with anybody anywhere in the world, and they can be present with us. Of course, some of that creates a bit of separation, but I do believe that the not only the potential, but that we are already doing this
Mm.
connection, that it actually is informing a lot of connection and a lot of being with each other. So probably, polarizing on both aspects,
Mm.
um, but it's all of it. There's 1 degree of separation at this point.
Yes. Yeah, and room for all of it, and room for shamanic work and deep, deep work, that might take you away from your life for a year or two. And there's also, you know, there's room for the moment
Mhm.
of where you just get to drop in with yourself for 5 minutes and you spend that time and it's super powerful and it's guided by you and your own higher self and your own soul team or, somebody in your life. So all of it is in beautiful harmony. All of it is necessary and gorgeous for us to step into and choose at the
Yeah,
right moments and the right time. And I love when people choose to work with me to be able to have that time with them. But I also love when they just choose to walk away and be like, that's okay. I'm good. I want to do this. And I'm like, I'm ready. And I'm like, yay, like, go,
yeah,
go. That's
absolutely.
what it's all about is actually, any work I do with people, and maybe you can relate to this, is to get them to the point of where they don't need me. They don't
Yeah.
feel like they need me or feel like they need anybody, that
Mhm,
their answers are coming from within, that
mhm,
they're guiding themselves, and
mhm.
that they are in true resonance with the source consciousness to know that they already have the connection. They don't need me to tell
Yeah,
them they are connected, right? So,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Everyone's life is this incredible, beyond magnificent, uh, work of art, and to really be able to tune into the specialness of our own experience and to let it be special, to let it you know, let it be really profound, be guided by the poetry of our own experience. And yes, at times bringing this in or bringing that in or witnessing as it naturally happens, right? And then there are times when it seems that we're more walking on our own. It's that dance. It's
Hmm.
really
Right.
profound.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you want to dance with a partner. Other times you're
Yeah.
just spinning off in your own.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I hire someone to bake bread because I'm not going to, right? So we also don't have to do it all our own. And we're not meant to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really truly don't like cooking. So if I have any volunteers who are watching this, no, but for real though, we are not made to do it all our own. And we are made to do some things very well. That is, and it's all part of the harmony. It's all
Hmm.
part of the harmony.
Now that you're on your book tour, traveling and being in new spaces all the time, different spaces, do you uh, do you see your work being a reflection of the way you're living in your life?
Mm.
That your work is shown, I guess, modeled in how you be, or are you? Well, I know the answer to that. I mean, I know you're guided to these places, but I was going to say, is there like some strategy for where you're going and where you're landing to be be the pathway, leading the path to what's
Mm.
next for you?
Yeah, it's such a dance. It's such a dance because I get the signal. I get literal city names where to go. I actually planned this tour for last year, and the book didn't get done, and so obviously the tour didn't happen. The book wasn't published until August of 2023.
Mhm.
So as I do my best translating the inspiration, the divine um, awareness that comes to me and putting it into human form and planning these things and letting the plan shift and change. There's so much divinity, and sometimes events not working out, which has happened, or this and that falling through, right? I put in quotes because there is just such a profound dance that's like that I'm witnessing, that's living through me, that I get to participate in. Um, that is truly far beyond my human mind. And even in my channeled space, I do my best to translate it. So I am rapidly and powerfully shifting through this whole process as I deepen my practice of dancing with life. Um, Witnessing how I'm informed and then how it plays out, because we've got all these dimensional spaces that we're existing within. So the way that it looks here is not the way that it plays out here, according to the way that the mind might translate it.
Mm.
Um, it's really powerful, yeah. So, um, and also, this is how I write my books. I receive the information. The book cannot be published and will not be finished until I am living the information that's in the book.
Yeah.
And so this is all part of it.
Mm. Mm.
Uh,
So another book is maybe being written now.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
I have inklings of what it is. And also, I'm not going to pretend that I really fully know at all,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
there are truly things opening in the next several years, globally and individually, that are so far beyond our mental perception and comprehension. It's going to be really, really profound. It's so powerful. When I channel, I just keep hearing like this shift is going to be massive, and I can't fully see it. I don't have an understanding of really what that's going to look like, because there's so many shifts, and it's going to come into the physical, and it's going to look very different. So yeah, it's all just a really powerful process.
Mhm. But you don't yet know, has there been anything shown to you as far as what that could look like or be like for either you, Allison, or for the collective?
um yes, not to bring any like fear or drama, but um globally, we're going to see a lot of change in terms of the places that we've placed stability. So, government, uh, all of the structures, I'm hearing Kali Yuga again, a lot of breaking down, a lot of control paradigms really, really raising as they fall apart. Um, Simultaneous to this existence of new earth, they're not, it is happening at the same time, so it really is what we're paying attention to. But we're in both worlds, we are in both worlds, all worlds. Right? So what we focus on, what we
Mhm.
pay attention to, and to know that, it's interesting, I can't, and I'm very hesitant to give specifics, because it's the energetic occurrence of what's happening, right? It's sort of like the healing process in the body. When we go into the healing process, sometimes, things look way worse before they look better, but they're actually on their way to becoming just incredibly healed, whole, beautiful. That's
Right.
what's happening. Right now, we're in that, what do they call it? Uh, Health crisis, right?
Yeah,
Globally,
the
we're in
healing
sort of a
crisis.
global health crisis because it's transforming rapidly. And so I don't want to give specifics, and I don't even really want to try and understand the specifics. My work is really to say this is what's being created, the bigger picture. It is heaven on earth. My next book is around reestablishing the templates of the Garden of Eden, and so that's the purpose. And so just like in a garden when things break down so that it can create new soil. That's what's happening.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that too. And I know that there's a lot of people awakening to this and coming into this understanding, and then therefore being called to be part of that making of the Garden
Yes.
of Eden, the making of this new earth and this new energetic, the making of it just by focusing on it. And that's
Yes.
how powerful we are too, is that you can just focus on that and not all the shit that they're offering you up on the news,
Yes.
and not all of the, fear mongering that's going on. Like, just focus on beauty and our
Yeah.
creative ability, and on the incredible co-creative power that we have. By doing that, just the focus being there brings the energy there, brings the
Yes.
power to that model versus this other model. And I see that
Yes.
happening too. That other model is going to rear its ugly head as many
Yes.
times as it needs to try to gain, power and be seen and be, it's just like anything. It's just like anything
Yes.
in life, it
Yeah.
it wants to be seen, recognized, heard too,
Yeah.
and can it be loved away? Maybe, with enough focus over here in love, in literally the energetic of love,
Yeah.
that could be loved away. Not by being like, oh, I love you, and putting your energy there, but putting your energy in love and everything you
Yes.
love, and being love,
Yeah.
that could be loved away by just this taking over, and that force of that energy being stronger. Will it ever completely go away? No, because we have this duality here, and there's a balance of things going on, but it can be uh diminished to the point of where it's not the ruling energy.
Mhm.
Right, we've got these like dueling energies right now, and one of them always wants to rule, and yeah, we'll I'm on the side of love, and I know
Yeah.
you are too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Powerfully, love encompasses all of it. It actually receives all of it. It is the outer Russian nesting doll that
mm,
says, I'm not attached or pushing away. None of this is detrimental to anything. It all is. And through the isness of it is actually how we powerfully transform.
yeah, yeah, so beautiful. Well, I love spending time with you. I'm so happy that we got to connect while you're on the road, and I'm looking forward to hearing and witnessing and experiencing the unfolding of the new book. I will put all your links in the show notes so that people can get to your other books and get to you if they wish to connect with you, and book a session with you, or just be in your space. I think I was saying this to somebody the other day. I'm like, oh yeah, spirit works through the internet too. And
Yeah,
we've got this incredible
I
technology
love
where
that.
we can connect into people Instagram, or we can connect into their
Yes,
websites. And even that, like, even if you never hired that person or worked directly with them or ever met them in person, like connecting into their content, into the things that they share and that they are online, also can be a powerful conduit of energy as well. So all
absolutely.
your links will go in the show notes. People can connect to you. Anything that you'd like to leave people with before we say our goodbyes?
From the most genuine place in me, I love each and every one of you. I'm honored to be on this planet with you, and let's play.
Let's play. Yay. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.